Beautiful women can be happy. Ugly girls end up unhappy. Is that really true? I have a beautiful older sister and I am the not-so-pretty younger one. I got married first, and my husband is a doctor. Then my sister did something unbelievable. My name is Roseanne, and I am 28 years old. I have a beautiful sister who is 2 years older than me. Her name is Marcia. Some parents only love their well-behaved children or those who are cute. Luckily, our parents loved both Marcia and me equally, even though Marcia was beautiful and I was a bit plain. But Marcia thought, "It's not fair to treat beautiful me and plain Roseanne the same way." This attitude was influenced a lot by my mom's sister, our Aunt Wendy. Wendy, who was 3 years older than my mom Caddy, was an impeccably groomed single woman. She was a career woman, always dressed in expensive-looking suits. Even to me, she seemed like a very cool woman. But she looked down on my housewife mom Caddy and often said, "It's a woman like you who are holding back the advancement of women." And she would belittle my mom. Wendy doted on Marcia, who resembled her. Since elementary school, Wendy would take Marcia shopping and say, "Marcia is so cute and beautiful, it's so much fun to dress her up." She would buy her clothes and accessories. My mom would say, "Please don't do that only for Marcia." But Wendy ignored her. Wendy always told Marcia, "A girl has no value if she isn't pretty. Marcia, you are beautiful, so you are very valuable. You will definitely be happy. Ugly and fat girls have no value. They are bound to be unhappy in the future." As a child, I would sometimes cry in bed at night, thinking that I might be unhappy. I envied Marcia's beauty. But maybe Wendy was actually talking about her own sister, my mom Caddy, who was plump and not considered beautiful but had a charming smile. Yes, I took after my mom Caddy, while Marcia resembled our dad Cedric. Even as a child, I could see that my parents had a good relationship and that my dad loved my mom a lot. It made me think that you can be happy even if you're not beautiful. That thought saved me. During our teenage years, Marcia received fashionable clothes and makeup from Wendy, making her the leader of the popular girls group at school. I, on the other hand, was good at studying but spent most of my time reading books, escaping into the world of stories. I thought there was no point in trying to look fashionable. When I was a high school sophomore, Marcia got into a prestigious private college and started enjoying her college life. 2 years later, when I got into a public university, Marcia bitterly said, "Roseanne, studying is the only thing you're good at." And I actually felt that way about myself too. Wendy, even after turning 40, remained single and seemed to live freely, spending her money on herself. Marcia respected Wendy's way of life. I thought that kind of life was fine, just as I thought my parents' way of working for their family was fine too. Why do people compare themselves and feel superior or inferior? I've always found it puzzling, watching Wendy and Marcia. I studied psychology in college. Marcia graduated from college and got a job at a big company, boasting about her promotion to the position of receptionist in the general affairs department. She seemed to have many suitors and was considered quite the love-struck woman. Are you still single? That's too bad. I'd introduce you to my boyfriend's friends, but they're only interested in pretty girls, so it's impossible. I wouldn't want to see you get hurt, Roseanne. She would tell me this with a mix of sympathy, insincerity, and lies. Marcia often said to me, "You should try dieting a little. You never put in any effort, that's why it won't work for you." I must admit, Marcia did put in the effort to stay beautiful. Like any girl my age, I tried dieting once. But no matter how hard I tried, I realized I could never be like Marcia. Even if I lost weight, I wouldn't become beautiful, so I gave up. After graduating from college, I got a job as a psychological counselor at a general hospital. My non-threatening appearance and easygoing nature, which wasn't easily affected by patients' mental states, made me suitable for this job. People have various troubles and sufferings, and everyone wants to be happy, yet sometimes they act in ways that take them away from happiness. Listening to these people and helping them feel a little better was something I found very rewarding. It was at this hospital that I met Evan, a surgeon 4 years my senior. He was tall with a handsome face, but the nurses said that while he was charming and good-looking, he was too absent-minded to hold a conversation. I wondered what they meant by that. He seemed like an interesting person, so I decided to ask him during lunch in the cafeteria. I heard from a woman who went on a date with you that you're a bit absent-minded, Evan.
Huh? Have I ever been on a date? I've been invited to meals a few times because someone wanted advice, but...
What?
I thought they needed advice, so I listened, but it didn't seem like that. They kept asking me questions about myself, and I didn't have much to say, so I just ate and left.
Maybe they were interested in you and wanted to get to know you better. Saying they needed advice might have been an excuse. Really? You're the psychological counselor, right? That's impressive. You can tell those things. Well, it's pretty obvious. It was funny that he didn't realize how attractive he was. We talked more every time we saw each other in the cafeteria, and we became quite friendly. One day, with a serious expression, he said, "You said people ask questions to know more about someone they like. I want to know more about you, Roseanne. Does that mean I like you? Are you really asking me that?" I laughed, but it was the first time I felt my heart flutter. I realized I liked this slightly odd man. Despite being a psychological counselor, my experience with romance was limited, which was a bit of a concern for me. But a single person can only experience so much. For life advice, it's better to ask someone with more experience, but dealing with human psychology is a different matter. Even so, "I've never been in love," is something I could never say. That one sentence could make someone close off completely. Evan and I started going out together more often. We watched movies, visited art galleries and museums, and I enjoyed listening to his slightly offbeat comments. Evan said, "I was actually short until I became a senior high school student. The girls never treated me like a guy, and it wasn't until I got into high school that I grew taller. By then, I was studying all the time for med school, and I never had any luck with girls. I preferred hanging out with my guy friends or reading books alone rather than being with girls. Roseanne was the first person I truly enjoyed being with. I want to stay with you forever. What do you think?" There was only one answer to that question. "I want to be with you forever, too." That's how we decided to get married. I was 27 and Evan was 31. When Evan came to our house for a family meeting, my parents were, of course, delighted, but Marcia's reaction was terrible. "No way! I can't believe Roseanne is marrying a handsome doctor. Evan, what do you see in Roseanne that made you want to marry her?" Marcia asked. She probably thought, "What could you possibly see in someone as plain as Roseanne?" Evan responded, "Everything." Immediately. "Huh? I love everything about Roseanne." A perfect 100-point answer. "I never thought I'd get married before Marcia, but Marcia, you never planned to get married, right? You always said you wanted to live like Wendy." Marcia had become distant from Wendy since starting her job, but she was still popular enough to have plenty of men giving her gifts instead. Marcia preferred playing around with many men rather than settling down with just one. However, Marcia was 29 now. The number of men willing to play around with her had decreased significantly.
I never said I wouldn't get married. If the right person comes along, I would consider it.
She couldn't accept that I was marrying such a desirable man.
Marcia, stop it.
Cedric, who had been silent until then, spoke up.
Sure, Marcia is beautiful, but everyone has their preferences. I always found Caddy's charm more appealing than Wendy's beauty. Cedric, what are you saying?
Then Caddy revealed a shocking truth. Caddy and Wendy had been involved in a love triangle over Cedric in the past.
It wasn't as dramatic as a love triangle. I just think Wendy also had a thing for Cedric.
Was that why Wendy was still single? Did Wendy favor Marcia because she saw herself in her? Thinking that my parents also had such drama was a fresh surprise. Marcia fell silent afterward, and my parents apologized to Evan.
We're sorry for bringing up such strange stories.
They apologized repeatedly, and I didn't know what to do. Then Evan said with a laugh,
Cedric, I also prefer Roseanne over Marcia. We have something in common.
I couldn't help but find Evan's candidness endearing. Cedric, too.
Oh, really?
It seems like Evan and I will get along well, he said, extending his hand to Evan. Seeing Caddy laugh at this, the family meeting ended on a somewhat amicable note. Well, except for Marcia. Evan, being the youngest of 3 brothers and already over 30, his parents welcomed me, or rather, they had a feel-free attitude. Neither of us was interested in having a wedding or reception, but our friends and family insisted we at least take some photos in a dress, so we did. The professional hair and makeup artists did a great job, and the photos turned out quite well, though I swore I'd never endure such uncomfortable clothes again. Instead, we decided to spend our money and time on a honeymoon, enjoying a week-long trip to Germany. We didn't argue once during that week, and we toasted with German beer, feeling optimistic about our future together. Our newlywed life began in an apartment near the hospital where we both worked. One day, I received a call from Caddy, informing me that Wendy had collapsed and was hospitalized. It had been over 5 years since I last saw Wendy. Though I had informed her of my marriage, all I received was a gift card with an awkward amount of money on it. When I went to visit her in the hospital, I almost didn't recognize her. It wasn't just the long absence, but how drastically she had changed. Wendy, who had always been so beautiful and stylish, now had sagging skin, a poor complexion, and a lackluster appearance. Though she wasn't even 60 yet, she looked like she was well into her 70s. Wendy had fallen into a coma due to hypoglycemia from her diabetes and had collapsed in the elevator of her apartment building, where she was found and rushed to the hospital. Had she collapsed inside her apartment, living alone as she did, she might not have been discovered in time. The thought of her dying alone horrified me. About 10 days after visiting Wendy one evening, Marcia unexpectedly showed up at our apartment. She seemed very down.
Roseanne, you visited Wendy too, right? I heard she collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. I went there with Mom. I hadn't seen her in years, and I was shocked. Could that really be the same beautiful Wendy? Yeah, she looked like a different person. But maybe it was lucky she didn't collapse inside her apartment. She could have died alone. Dying alone.
Marcia's face turned pale.
Mom asked me to get some of Wendy's personal belongings from her apartment. Yeah? It was a complete mess, a hoarder's den. What? Yes, a hoarder's den. She used to be so tidy. How did it come to this?
Wendy, who I thought had been living a carefree single life, had been living in such squalor and had collapsed from poor health due to diabetes. This was a huge shock for Marcia, who had always admired Wendy and wanted to live like her.
And then, I had a fight with Mom and can't stay at home. Can I stay here for a while?
Why did you fight? Mom's asking me to run errands for Wendy. I can't believe it. Grandma's gone, and Wendy's unmarried and childless. Mom's her only family. You should help out, Marcia. Wendy was always so kind to you. I don't want to see Wendy like this. Don't you get it? I could understand her feelings, but it still seemed harsh.
Well, you can stay here. Right, Evan?
Of course, Marcia can stay. Thank you, Evan. As Marcia hugged Evan's arm, I felt a slight sense of unease. The next day, Marcia brought home wine and some fancy snacks as a thank you.
Marcia, what about your boyfriend? Wouldn't it be better to stay with him?
Because her boyfriends change frequently, I don't even know their faces or names. Oh, we broke up. I thought I might marry him, but he's marrying some girl who just graduated college. She's not cute at all, but her family seems rich. Marcia, slightly tipsy from the wine, speaks with an air of superiority, but essentially, she got dumped. I'm so tired of guys who have no taste in women. I went to a singles event just because I got invited, but all the men there were just the same. This surprised me. Marcia, who never had trouble finding a man, going to a singles event. And it seems that the man Marcia liked didn't choose her. Roseanne, you're lucky. You married a wonderful man like Evan. Marcia says, snuggling up to Evan. I suddenly noticed that Marcia is touching Evan a lot. Was Marcia always this physically affectionate with others? I thought, but since I couldn't imagine Marcia trying to seduce her sister's husband, I didn't pay much attention. Now I can't call Evan oblivious either. On the third day of Marcia's visit, I want to try some of Roseanne's homemade cooking, she said. We drank wine yesterday, and we had dinner out last night. Honestly, neither Marcia nor I are great cooks. If Caddy's cooking is a 10, Marcia's is a 1, and I'm about a 5. I can make something edible if I follow a recipe, but Marcia can't even do more than pour hot water into instant noodles. Even giving her a 1 is generous. I'm looking forward to your cooking, Roseanne, Marcia said as she sat on the sofa, clearly not planning to help. While I struggled in the kitchen, I occasionally heard Marcia's cheerful laughter. As I finished cooking and was about to bring the food to the table, I overheard a shocking line from Marcia. Hey, Evan. How about having a baby with me? What? What is she saying? I stopped in my tracks. I couldn't help but eavesdrop. I think we'd have a cute and smart baby. No, no, no. What is she talking about? This sister of mine.
What are you saying, Marcia? If I'm going to have a baby, it will be with Roseanne.
Evan must have thought it was a bad joke. He didn't take it seriously and brushed it off lightly. Then Marcia said, I think Evan is too good for Roseanne. We would be a more beautiful couple. It seems Marcia is seriously trying to take Evan from me. What kind of thought process is that?
I heard you went to a good university, Marcia, but are you really this stupid?
Huh?
Logically, no recently married man would have a child with his wife's sister.
I was glad Evan clearly said he wouldn't cheat with Marcia, as I believed. But Marcia didn't seem to back down. A beautiful wife and cute kids would make you happier in the long run. Leave Roseanne and start over with me. I couldn't stay silent any longer. I brought the food to the table and said to Marcia, Enough is enough, Marcia. What? Were you eavesdropping? This is my and Evan's house. I can hear you if you're talking so loudly. First, you suddenly start going to singles events, and now you're trying to seduce my husband. What are you thinking? But it's ridiculous that Roseanne gets to be happier than me. Marcia crossed her arms, her expression defiant and pouty.
Hey, if being beautiful means happiness, then why did Wendy end up like that?
When I said that, Marcia's face turned pale, and she shouted in anger. Stop it! I don't want to end up like that. Alone, ugly, living in a trash-filled house, absolutely not. And I can't stand the thought of you being happier than me. Despite being showered with affection, she was saying such terrible things.
So you thought if you took Evan from me, you'd kill two birds with one stone?
That's right! I was astonished. As if it could ever be that simple.
Marcia, you're really not that bright, are you? No matter how beautiful you are, your looks will eventually fade. People who have enduring qualities are much more attractive.
That's not true. Unlike Roseanne, I put in the effort.
I don't find women who only care about maintaining their beauty attractive. Besides, Marcia, you're not my type at all.
Evan said, looking exasperated, and Marcia burst into tears. Evan's natural bluntness was incredibly powerful. I remembered the words Wendy used to always say to Marcia. A girl isn't worth anything if she's not pretty. Marcia, you're beautiful, so you're a very valuable girl. You'll definitely be happy. Ugly, fat girls have no value. They're bound to be unhappy in the future. Those words might have cursed Marcia. They had affected me too. But now, I can proudly say that's not true.
Marcia, being beautiful doesn't guarantee happiness, and being ugly doesn't guarantee unhappiness. Forget what Wendy told you.
After crying for a while, Marcia said,
I'm leaving. Sorry for disturbing you.
And she went home. I wondered how Marcia was doing, so I called Caddy to ask. Apparently, Marcia had been using her weekends to clean Wendy's house recently. What kind of change of heart was this? Curious, Evan and I decided to visit Wendy's house on the weekend. There we found Marcia, with no makeup, sweating as she cleaned.
What happened to you, Marcia?
Wendy has done a lot for me. When I thought about her coming back to live in this trash-filled house after she gets out of the hospital, I realized I couldn't let it stay like this. It was surprising to hear Marcia say something like that, but I was touched.
If Wendy's life ends up being miserable, I feel like I won't be able to be happy either.
Maybe she was doing it for herself, but perhaps Marcia was also reflecting on her own life.
Roseanne, I'm sorry for everything.
I felt like it was the first time Marcia had ever apologized to me. Just hearing that made me feel like I could forgive her. Maybe I'm too soft-hearted? After that, Evan and I helped with the cleaning, and we managed to get the house to a point where all that was left was to take out the trash. Today's Marcia is pretty great. Even though I can't forgive you for wishing for your sister's unhappiness, I still want you to be happy too. Evan said straightforwardly. Yeah. I'm serious about finding a husband too. Evan, introduce me to a doctor. Marcia cheekily expressed her hope. Maybe she hadn't really learned her lesson. There's a single head surgeon in his 40s. He's a good person, but he's shorter than you, has thinning hair, and is a bit chubby. Should I introduce you? I knew him too. He was a good person, but not the type to attract women. What should I do? Marcia said, pondering, but apparently, Evan faithfully introduced her to the head surgeon. However, during the arranged meeting, Marcia was politely declined. I guess he doesn't like the I'm beautiful, aren't I type. Hearing the reason for the rejection from Evan, the usually confident Marcia was quite shocked and felt very down. There are definitely people who think it's okay for someone to have a bad personality if she is beautiful. What the heck? That's not comforting at all. Despite saying that, Marcia continued to pursue her matchmaking efforts. Wendy was discharged safely, and she cried with gratitude when she saw the tidied room, thanking Caddy and Marcia. Lately, she's been learning diabetes-friendly recipes from Caddy. Marcia encouraged Wendy to try matchmaking too, and it seems Wendy is quite enthusiastic about it. They often go shopping together happily. It seems like being a sister is tough. What if we have 2 daughters? I can't help but laugh at Evan, worrying about this when we don't even have kids yet. You just have to love them. Just like my parents loved Marcia and me equally. You'll be fine, Evan. Yeah, you're right. There's no way I wouldn't love the kids Roseanne and I have. Having a husband who says things like this makes me so happy. Yes, we need to get Marcia happily married soon too, so she won't do anything strange to our kids. I also love how he sometimes says things that are unintentionally a bit mean. I've proven that even someone not conventionally attractive can be happy, haven't I? When I said that. Whoever said Roseanne is not attractive? You're so cute, Evan said seriously. It made me realize again that everyone has their preferences. But if it weren't for that, the world would only have beautiful couples. I don't have money to lend to an incompetent craftsman covered in debt. Pay back the full $500,000 by the end of this month. A new loan officer named Wilson, a woman, came to my office, where I've been a craftsman for 35 years, and immediately demanded the termination of the loan and the repayment of $500,000 in full. Lending money to an old woman working in an office on the brink of collapse due to debt doesn't guarantee repayment. Better pay it all back while you're still alive. Wilson's extremely rude behavior made me explode with anger. Got it. Pay back the $500,000 in full, right? Fine, but you'll regret this. When I promised to repay the $500,000 in full, Wilson burst out laughing, holding her stomach. As if,
A lousy banker like you will definitely regret this.
I declared my retaliation against Wilson in a low voice, but it seemed she didn't hear it. I ignored Wilson, who continued to laugh loudly. My name is Smith. At the age of 60, I am still active as a gardener. I started working as a gardener 35 years ago at Smith Landscape Design, a company I now run as president. After graduating from high school, I joined the company that Dad was managing at the time. Becoming a skilled gardener takes many years, as it requires artisan skills. I was first allowed to handle a job alone at the age of 25, and exactly 10 years ago, I took over as president when Dad, the previous president, was diagnosed with stomach cancer. Once, it was common for houses to have gardens, but with the changing times, the number of condominiums and apartments has increased, and the demand for gardeners has decreased. But neither my dad nor I have ever thought of quitting our jobs. Even today, a certain number of people live in houses with gardens. Many of them are elderly and find it difficult to tend to their gardens due to back pain and unsteady legs. Our business had declined temporarily, but as rival landscaping companies continued to close, we no longer lose customers to other companies. I want to continue developing the business as a landscaping company loved by the community. At 60, I'm older, but I'm still active and will continue to be. I'm determined to stabilize the business so that my children can confidently take over when I can no longer work. That was my resolution. Then, one day, a banker named Brown appeared at the office of Smith Landscape Design, which I run. Brown has been our loan officer since the days when Dad was president. I'm sorry to say this on a personal note, but I've decided to retire. I am very grateful for all the support Smith has given me. My successor will be Wilson from our bank. Brown said this politely, standing next to a woman who appeared to be in her 20s. A young female banker named Wilson greeted me briefly. "Thank you. I look forward to working with you." Even when I greeted her, Wilson did not respond at all. The conversation shifted to small talk with Brown, and I didn't exchange a single word with the new officer, Wilson. She was young, so maybe she hadn't yet mastered the manners expected in the business world. Still, I couldn't help but worry if it was really okay to entrust our finances to someone like her. Soon after the banker who had been handling our account retired, Wilson visited my company's office. "Hello, I'm Wilson from Trust Bank. My boss told me to visit customers, so I'm here to greet you." I was taken aback by Wilson's attitude and found myself speechless. I wondered if it was normal to tell a client that you're visiting because your boss said so. "Thank you for taking the time to come here." My forced smile must have conveyed my feelings, as Wilson responded with an annoyed look. "What's with that tone? Are you implying that I shouldn't have come?" "No, it's not that. It's just unusual to hear someone say so frankly that they're visiting a client because their boss told them to," I retorted, irritated by Wilson's presumptuous attitude. "I was just stating the facts. Anyway, I'm busy. I don't have time to waste on meaningless things like this." With that, Wilson abruptly ended the conversation and left. In my 60 years of life, I had never encountered someone so rude. After Wilson left, I was so stunned that for a moment, I wondered if it had all been a dream or an illusion. Within a week, Wilson visited our office again. As soon as she arrived, her face turned red with anger as she started yelling at me. "You apologize to me right now. If you give me a profound apology, I won't go to the police. I'll settle this matter without involving them." "I'm sorry. I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you please explain?" I had no clue what she was referring to. "Don't play dumb. An employee of yours demanded $100,000 from my grandmother for unsolicited garden maintenance and told her to transfer it to a specified account." I was shocked to hear this accusation against our employee, but upon reflection, our company only deals in cash payments. We would never have our customer transfer their money to a certain account. We collect payment in cash directly from our customers upon completion of our work. Do you have any proof that an employee of our company did what you're accusing us of?" I retorted confidently, and Wilson responded with equal force. "My grandmother clearly said that someone named Williams from Smith Landscape Design called her. She was deceived and paid $100,000. You're the president, right? Take responsibility." We have 80 employees, including gardeners, apprentices, sales, and accounting staff, but I was sure there was no one named Williams in our company. "Please give me a moment to check." I said this and returned to the office, then came back to Wilson with the employee roster. "Due to privacy concerns, I can't show you this, but I have confirmed that there is no one named Williams in our company." "Oh, I see. You're determined to deny your responsibility. If that's how you want to play it, I'll think of a good strategy. You better be prepared." With those words, Wilson left. I wondered what she was planning. Her face haunted me, whether I was awake or asleep. A few days later, Wilson came to my office again. "I have no money to lend to a useless craftsman buried in debt. Pay back the full $500,000 by the end of this month." Wilson, right after arriving at the office, demanded the termination of the loan and the full repayment of $500,000. It didn't seem like the bank's directive. Could this be her own decision? "Why do you think our office is in deficit? And why is it necessary to repay the full loan amount this month? Please explain." Despite my calm and composed request for an explanation, Wilson continued with disrespectful words, smiling condescendingly. "An old lady as the president? Of course, you're in the red. Moreover, there's no demand for landscaping nowadays. Better pay it all back while you're still alive." Then, Wilson whispered something even more shocking in my ear.
Well, that's just the official reason. If you pay back the $500,000, 5 times the $100,000 your company supposedly cost my grandmother, I'll let this go.
At Wilson's outrageous behavior, my anger exploded. I get it. Paying back $500,000 in full, right? Fine, but you'll regret this. As I agreed to repay the $500,000 in full, Wilson burst out laughing. As if. The one who will regret is you, old lady. Can you even pay back $500,000 in full? You'll only be laughing for now. A terrible banker like you will definitely regret this. I declared my retaliation against Wilson in a low voice, but it seemed she didn't hear. I ignored Wilson, who continued to laugh loudly. The next day, I called the bank and spoke with the customer service representative. Hello? I'm Smith. Thank you for your usual support. Could you please tell your loan officer Wilson to stop coming to my office? It's causing us trouble. I'm terribly sorry. The branch manager will head over to your place immediately. As the representative was about to hang up, apologizing, I overheard someone nearby, perhaps another bank employee, saying something. Her again? How many times has it been now? This implied that Wilson might have been repeating similar actions with other clients. As I stepped outside the office, I found Wilson waiting for me. Oh, there you are, old lady. Hiding won't help. If you don't want to be reported to the police, sign these papers right away. Saying this, Wilson presented documents to terminate our loan agreement. Is this the bank's decision, or just yours? My opinion is the bank's opinion, obviously. Anyway, a fraud like you has no right to complain. Just sign it. Wilson aggressively demanded that I sign the papers. I just called the bank. The branch manager is on his way, and I'll sign it then. Wilson's face suddenly turned pale. What? Why did you call the bank? I thought you were just trying to avoid me by not leaving your office. When did I say I was trying to escape? To my question, Wilson couldn't respond, visibly unsettled and looking like she wanted to flee. Just then, a bike stopped behind Wilson. I ushered the branch manager, who had just gotten off the bike with a worried expression, and a resentful Wilson into our office's reception area. I am terribly sorry for the inappropriate behavior of our staff member Wilson. It's inexcusable. The manager apologized politely, then glared sharply at Wilson. Why would you do this to one of our most valued customers who has always supported our bank? But this person is a fraudster. She scammed $100,000 from my grandmother. Wilson, even while being scolded by the manager, insisted on portraying me as the villain. I explained everything to the branch manager about Wilson's actions. The manager then said to Wilson, "If you heard your own grandmother was scammed, would you go straight to the scammer to complain? Wouldn't you normally report it to the police first?" I was too distraught to think clearly. If your own family was scammed, could you calmly report it to the police without hesitation? I bet you couldn't. Wilson's defiant attitude made the manager sigh deeply. If you check the customer information, you should see that Smith is a valued customer. Plus, if there's no one named Williams in Smith Landscape Design's employee roster, it's possible that an outsider pretended to be an employee and made the call. Wilson seemed to finally realize the possibility of an outsider's involvement. Her expression suddenly changed, and she fell silent. We confirmed Wilson's grandmother's name and address, but there was no record of any landscaping request from her. Moreover, her grandmother lived in public housing. Unless the local government specifically requests our services, we would not perform any work there. In any case, shouldn't the first step be to report it to the police? Wilson flinched at my words but ignored them, looking anxiously at the branch manager. It's unbelievable. An outsider did this. But it's just a $500,000 loan termination. It's not a big deal, right? You make a fuss over your grandmother being scammed out of $100,000, but you think terminating a loan 5 times that amount is no big deal? Wilson, glared at by the manager, seemed to realize it was best to stay quiet. She said nothing more. Wilson may have graduated from a prestigious university, but her humanity is failing. Decisions like terminating a loan cannot be made by a bank employee alone. Such actions require reporting to and approval from the branch manager, me. Someone who doesn't understand this basic principle has no right to continue working as a banker. We will take strict disciplinary action against Wilson. The manager apologized to me and led Wilson away, almost dragging her by the collar. Alone, I reflected on my past interactions with the bank. Actually, our company currently isn't in a position where we struggle with cash flow without loans. However, we have been receiving loans from the bank mainly as a way to maintain our relationship. Initially, I couldn't understand why we would borrow money when we had enough. My father told me that Smith Landscape Design, founded by my grandfather, had faced several financial crises, and it was the banks we had relationships with that helped us each time. Banks have lending targets, and they strive to meet them. But when a business is in trouble and seeks help, banks often hesitate to lend if the performance outlook is poor. Therefore, it's important to take loans when we can afford them, to build a repayment record and trust with the bank. This way, they are more likely to help us when we are in need. That's why we have been periodically taking loans. Yet, what was the meaning behind this recent behavior? A novice banker lacking even basic social manners. A branch manager who let such an employee run free. It was clear that the trust we had built was crumbling. I started feeling uneasy about entrusting our important money, let alone receiving loans, to such a bank. After consulting with my family, I made a decision. The next day, I went to Trust Bank to convey my decision. I had informed them of my visit in advance, so upon arrival, I was immediately shown to the reception room. There, I found the branch manager and Wilson, who both greeted me politely as I entered. Facing their bowed heads, I said, "Regarding the loan, it's fine to terminate it. Fortunately, we haven't used it yet, so we will repay it immediately." Upon hearing my words, the branch manager quickly sat up in alarm. "Mr. Smith, please don't worry about the loan. We have a long-standing relationship. I hope we can continue working together." The manager was almost pleading. But my decision was firm. If I hadn't called the bank, what would have become of Wilson? She would still be coming to my office, hurling insults and rudeness, wouldn't she? I can't trust a bank that allows such employees to run rampant. I'm sorry, but I have to end our relationship. I am truly sorry for what happened. We will take strict action against Wilson. Such an incident will not happen again. Please, won't you continue doing business with us? The manager said something like, "I owe my growth to your father, and I want to continue repaying that favor." However, his words didn't resonate with me. No matter what you say, my decision won't change. As I was pushing the branch manager away, the reception room door was abruptly opened. A bank employee rushed in, clearly in a panic. From their demeanor, I could tell something had happened. "Excuse me. I must leave." As the manager stood up to leave the reception room, a woman's loud voice could be heard. "When I visited your bank the other day, a banker named Wilson said to me, 'We don't lend money to the incompetent.' What kind of training do you give your bankers?" The manager turned back with a worried look. Seeing his reaction, I was convinced that I wasn't the only one affected. He began, but his gaze shifted from me to somewhere else. Following his line of sight, I saw Wilson biting her nails, mumbling to herself. The branch manager quickly approached Wilson. "You're fired as of today. Get out of here right now," he said, pointing to the door. It seemed unexpected, and Wilson, her face turning pale, stared intently at the branch manager before suddenly standing up. Then, with a fluid motion, she made a deep apology.
Please, don't fire me. I beg you.
Such a hollow apology. It was fortunate for us that we didn't rely on the loan, but many businesses must have been seriously affected. Though Wilson didn't have the final say, the thought of businesses being troubled by someone like her was distressing.
Do you have any idea how many valued customers we've lost because of you? Your dismissal is the only option.
Please, give me another chance.
Enough! You're fired.
Just one more chance. Their argument seemed endless. Realizing that watching any longer was a waste of time, I stood up, drawing their attention. I decided to say one last thing to Wilson, who was pathetically clinging to the manager.
Wilson, remember you said I wouldn't regret it? This is the result. It's all your own doing.
At my words, Wilson collapsed in despair. Later, the branch manager came to inform me about Wilson's dismissal, pleading,
Please give us another chance.
But of course, I refused. Wilson was wrong for her outrageous behavior towards customers, but the branch manager who let it continue was also responsible. It seemed other customers felt the same way. The customer exodus didn't stop, and eventually, the branch was closed and the building was demolished. The site was decided to be turned into a park. About half a year later, I saw a woman who resembled Wilson, but she was so tanned, it was hard to tell if it was really her. However, it was likely her.
You claim to be a former elite banker, but can't even get this right.
Seeing her being scolded by a senior, I was sure it was Wilson. After her dismissal from the bank, she seemed to have become a traffic guard at a construction site. Tanned and sweating, being yelled at over the radio, no one would guess she was once a banker. Watching Wilson, I hoped that this tough job might bring a slight change of heart in her. Meanwhile, I took on the landscaping for the park that replaced the bank. Our business suddenly got busier. People seeing our Smith landscape design truck parked during work led to an increase in requests. We started getting requests for grass maintenance in shared areas of parks, condominiums, and apartments. Being used to maintaining gardens for detached houses, this was somewhat unfamiliar. But to continue thriving as a gardener, adapting to the diverse needs of various clients might be essential. I wanted to keep contributing as a gardener and watching our business grow.